The morning sun shone through the windows of Luna Station as Commander Kim Day walked slowly through the empty corridors. His footsteps echoed softly in the quiet space station that orbited Earth like a giant metal moon. 3,000 years had passed since humans last fired a weapon in anger, and Kim Day was proud of that record. He stopped at the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Each tiny light represented a world where humans worked as doctors, teachers, and peacemakers, though Galaxy knew humans as the species that helped everyone and never hurt anyone. Children from dozens of different alien races played together in human schools, and their parents trusted humans completely. Kim Day smiled as he thought about his daughter. Hannah She was 8 years old with bright eyes and a laugh that could light up any room. Right now, she was far away at the Galactic Youth Academy on Proxima Base, learning alongside children from many different worlds. Hannah loved her alien friends and often sent him pictures of them studying together. The academy was the best school in the galaxy, where young minds learned about peace cooperation and friendship between different species. Human children attended there as honored guests because everyone knew humans were the most peaceful beings in the universe. No parent ever worried about sending their child to study with humans. Kim Day pulled out his communication device and smiled as Hannah's face appeared on the screen. She was sitting in her dormitory room with her roommate, a small blue alien girl named Kira. Both children were working on their homework together, laughing at something funny in their textbook daddy look. "What I drew today," Hannah said, holding up a colorful picture of different alien species holding hands around a planet. The aliens all had big smiles, and the human child in the center looked just like Hannah herself. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Kim Day replied, feeling warm, happiness fill his chest. "You are learning so much about making friends with everyone." "Yes, Daddy. And tomorrow we are going to visit the Centauri Gardens, where they grow food for hungry people on distant planets. Miss Yara says humans started that project 50 years ago to help feed the Galaxy." Kim Day nodded with pride. Humans had indeed created feeding programs, medical centers, and schools throughout the galaxy. After 3,000 years of peace, humanity had become known as the helper species, the ones who fixed problems instead of creating them. Meanwhile, on the medical station near Vega Prime, Dr. Park Sue was finishing her shift at the Galactic Medical Center. She had just saved the life of a Zephyrian soldier who had been badly injured in a mining accident on the outer rim worlds. The soldier belonged to a species known for being tough and warlike, but Dr. Park Sue had treated him with the same gentle care she gave to everyone. "Thank you, human doctor," the soldier said weakly as she checked his bandages. "You saved my life, even though my people and yours are so different. We are all the same when we need help," Dr. Park Sue replied softly. Her voice was kind and warm like a mother's voice. "That is what humans believe. We help everyone who needs it," Dr. Park Sue thought about her son Jin, who was 10 years old and currently sleeping in their apartment on the station. Jin dreamed of becoming a peace ambassador just like his mother. He collected friendship tokens from different alien species and kept them in a special box under his bed. Each token represented a new friend he had made, and Jin was very proud of his collection. The boy was fascinated by the different cultures in the galaxy. He could speak 7 alien languages and loved to learn about how different species lived their lives. Jin believed that understanding each other was the key to keeping peace in the universe. His mother had taught him that fighting was never the answer to any problem on Earth in the capital city of New Geneva. Admiral Lee I was preparing for another day of meetings with the Galactic Council. He served as humanity's main representative in the galactic government and spent his time helping to solve disputes between different alien races. Admiral Lee Wan was a patient man who could listen to complaints for hours without getting angry. He had helped negotiate peace treaties between warring species and had never failed to find a solution that made everyone happy. The other council members respected him greatly, because humans were known for being fair and wise. His twin daughters Min and So were 7 years old and the most important things in his life. Both girls had their mother's gentle nature and their father's strong sense of justice. They attended the same Galactic Youth Academy as Hana, and were best friends with children from many different worlds. This morning, Admiral Li Wan received a video message from his daughters. They were standing in their academy classroom surrounded by alien children, of all shapes, sizes, and colors. The teacher was a tall green being with 4 arms who was showing them a map of the galaxy. "Look," Daddy Min said, pointing to a red dot on the map. "That is where the Altarians live. They have 2 suns and their skin changes color with the weather. And this is where the Draknari come from." So added excitedly, pointing to a blue dot, "Their cities float in the clouds and they can fly without machines." Admiral Li Wan felt deep satisfaction as he watched his daughters, learning about the galaxy with such joy and curiosity. This was what 3,000 years of peace had created. A universe where children could learn about differences without fear, where species could share knowledge instead of fighting wars. The Academy had children from over 40 different species, all learning together in harmony. Human children were always welcome because everyone trusted humans completely. Parents from across the galaxy sent their young ones to study with humans, knowing they would be safe and well cared for. In the outer regions of the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire controlled vast territories through military might. Their leader, War General Vorth, was a massive being with scarred skin and cold eyes who believed that strength came only through violence. He had built his empire by conquering weaker species and forcing them to serve the Zephyrian military. War General Vorth often looked at reports about human activities throughout the galaxy and felt growing irritation. Humans had gained more influence than his empire, despite never fighting a single war. They had earned respect through helping others, while he had to use fear and force to maintain control. The idea that peace could be stronger than war insulted everything War General Vorth believed about the natural order of the universe. He watched as more species chose to ally with humans instead of bowing to Zephyrian power. Trade routes that once paid tribute to his empire now sought human protection. Instead, how can beings who refuse to fight gain so much power? He wondered aloud during a meeting with his military commanders. The humans have no weapons, no armies, no conquests, yet they influence more worlds than we do. His commanders had no good answer because they too were confused by humanity's success through peace. The Zephyrian way was simple: conquer the weak and rule through fear, but humans had somehow gained galactic influence by healing the sick, teaching children, and solving disputes. War. General Vorth decided that humanity's peaceful nature was actually a weakness that could be exploited. If humans truly refused to fight, then they could not defend themselves when threatened. The galaxy needed to learn that peace was just another word for weakness, and he would be the one to teach that lesson. Back on Luna Station, Kim Dae was reviewing the daily shipping reports when his assistant brought him coffee. The young man was from the Centauri colonies and had specifically requested to work under human command because he knew humans treated their workers fairly. "Commander, sir," the assistant said with respect, "all the trade routes are running smoothly today. The Altarian grain ships arrived on schedule and the medical supplies for the Vegan refugees are already being distributed." "Thank you," Juno, Kim Dae replied, using the assistant's human nickname instead of his complicated alien name. "This is why I love our work. We help keep the galaxy fed and healthy on Proxima Base." Hana was having lunch with her friends from different worlds. They sat at a round table designed to accommodate various alien body types, sharing food from their home planets and talking excitedly about their afternoon classes. "My father says humans are the luckiest species in the galaxy," said her friend Kira, the blue alien girl. "Because everywhere you go, people are happy to see you." Hana tilted her head thoughtfully. "I think we are lucky because we get to have friends like you." she said, making Kira smile widely. Meanwhile, Dr. Park Soo was teaching a group of young medical students from various species about treating injuries without causing pain. Her son, Jin, sat in the back of the classroom taking notes, even though he was too young to officially attend the classes. The key to healing, Dr. Park Soo explained, is to remember that every being feels pain the same way. Whether they have scales, feathers, or skin, they all want the hurt to stop. Our job is to make that happen with kindness. One of the students, a young Draknari with silver wings, raised her hand. What if the patient is from a species that has hurt your people in the past, then you heal them anyway? Dr. Park Soo said firmly, because healing is about the future, not the past. When you save someone's life, you plant a seed of peace that might grow into friendship. Admiral Lee Wan was in his office on Earth, preparing for the weekly Galactic Council meeting when his aide brought him the latest diplomatic reports. Most were routine matters, trade agreements, resource sharing, peaceful border adjustments between neighboring species. The only concerning item was a brief note about increased Zephyrian military activity near the Outer Rim. The morning started like any other Tuesday at the Galactic Youth Academy on Proxima Base. Hana woke up early and helped her roommate Kira organize their shared study materials for the day ahead. Jin was already in the cafeteria eating breakfast with his friends from different worlds. Min and So sat together at their favorite table near the large windows that showed the beautiful blue star of Proxima in the distance. Little Name Bo, who was only 6 years old, clutched his stuffed earth bear. As he walked to his first class of the day, the bear was brown and soft and had been a gift from his grandmother before he left for the academy. Nam Bo never went anywhere without his bear, and the other children thought it was cute how he talked to it when he felt scared or lonely. The academy held 432 students from 47 different species, but only 43 of them were human children. The human kids were special guests because everyone in the galaxy trusted humans completely. Parents from distant worlds felt proud when their children became friends with human students. At exactly 9:30 in the morning, the Academy sensors detected 12 large ships approaching from hyperspace. The ships were massive and dark with the red markings of the Zephyrian Empire. But this did not cause immediate alarm. Zephyrian ships often passed through this system on their way to the Outer Rim territories. Principal Nara was a wise old being from the Altarian species, with silver skin that changed color based on her emotions. Right now, her skin showed calm blue patterns as she watched the ships on her monitoring screen. Military vessels sometimes stopped at educational facilities for routine inspections, and she assumed this was just another boring diplomatic visit. The lead Zephyrian ship sent a formal communication request, which Principal Nara accepted immediately. A massive figure appeared on her screen wearing the black armor of a Zephyrian commander. His scarred face showed no emotion as he spoke in the common galactic language. "This is Commander Vex of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," he said in a deep, cold voice. "We are conducting a routine security inspection of this facility. All students and staff are to report to the main assembly hall immediately." Principal Nara felt a small flutter of worry, but nodded politely. "Of course, Commander, we will gather everyone right away. Is there anything specific you are looking for? Just ensuring galactic security," the commander replied before cutting the transmission. Throughout the academy announcement, speakers crackled to life, asking all students and teachers to report to the main hall immediately. This happened sometimes when important visitors came to the school, so most of the children were not worried. They gathered their books and walked calmly through the corridors, chatting about their morning classes. Hana held hands with Kira as they walked toward the assembly hall. Both girls were excited because they thought they might get to meet real Zephyrian soldiers. Jin carried his collection of friendship tokens in his pocket, hoping he might get a new one from the visitors' Min, and so walked together as always, whispering about whether the soldiers would tell them stories about space battles. Nambo hugged his bear tightly as he followed his teacher toward the hall. The 6-year-old felt nervous around strangers, but his bear always made him feel better. The teacher smiled at him and said everything would be fine because the Zephyrians were just visiting. In the main hall, 432 students and 28 teachers gathered in neat rows according to their age groups. The human children were scattered throughout, the crowd sitting with their alien friends and roommates. Principal Nara stood at the front of the room, feeling increasingly uncomfortable as she watched the approaching ships through the large windows. The first Zephyrian soldiers entered the hall, wearing full combat armor and carrying energy weapons. This was unusual for a routine inspection, but Principal Nara told herself that security had probably been increased due to recent pirate activity in nearby systems. Commander Vex strode into the hall, followed by 50 armed soldiers. His cold eyes scanned the crowd of children and teachers as if he was looking for something specific. When his gaze fell on the human children scattered throughout the assembly, his scarred lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "Attention, students and faculty," he announced in his booming voice. "The Zephyrian Empire has identified a security concern at this facility. All human students will come forward immediately for special processing principle." Nara's silver skin suddenly turned bright orange with alarm. Special processing was not a normal term used in educational inspections. She stepped forward with her hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Commander, there must be some mistake," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "These children are here as students, not security risks. Perhaps we could discuss this in my office." The commander gestured to his soldiers, who immediately raised their weapons and pointed them at the crowd. The children began to whimper and cry as they realized something was very wrong. The alien students pressed closer to their human friends, trying to protect them. "There is no mistake," the commander said coldly. "Human children will now be transferred to Zephyrian custody. For educational purposes, the Empire has decided that these young humans need to learn about real strength." Hana stood up slowly, her small hand still holding Kira's blue fingers. She looked around at the soldiers with their scary weapons and felt her heart beating very fast. Jin clutched his friendship token so tightly that the metal edges cut into his palm. Min and So held each other and started to cry silently. Nambo buried his face in his bear's soft fur and whispered that he wanted to go home. The little boy did not understand what was happening, but he knew it was bad because all the adults looked scared. "We will not harm the other students," Commander Vex continued. "But the humans belong to the Empire now. They will learn what happens to species that think peace makes them strong." Principal Nara stepped between the soldiers and the children, her skin now burning red with protective anger. "You cannot take these children," she said firmly. "Their parents trusted us to keep them safe." The commander nodded to his soldiers, and 2 of them grabbed Principal Nara by her arms. The brave Altarian woman struggled to reach the children, but the soldiers held her back. Other teachers tried to help, but more soldiers surrounded them with weapons, ready one by one. The Zephyrian soldiers moved through the crowd and pulled the human children away from their friends. Kira screamed as they took Hana away. Jin dropped his precious friendship tokens as soldiers dragged him toward the exit. Min and So cried for their daddy as rough hands separated them from their classmates. Nambo would not let go of his bear, so a soldier tried to take it away from him. When the little boy cried and held on tighter, the soldier laughed and ripped the bear's arm off. The stuffing fell on the floor like snow as Nambo sobbed. 43 human children were forced to march out of the academy while their alien friends watched in horror. The other students cried and called out their names, but the soldiers kept pushing the humans toward their ships in space above Proxima Base. Kim Day was reviewing shipping schedules when his communication system exploded with emergency signals. The transmission that came through made his blood turn cold. "This is Commander Vex of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet." He announced to the galaxy humanities. "Children now belong to the Empire. They will learn what real strength looks like in our educational facilities. Any attempt to interfere will result in their immediate execution. The transmissions switched to show the inside of a Zephyrian transport ship, where 43 human children sat in metal cages, crying for their parents. Hana pressed her face against the bars, looking directly into the camera. Jin held the torn pieces of Nambos Bear. Trying to fix it, Min, and so held hands through the bars of their separate cages. We are taking them to learn proper respect for strength, Commander Vex continued. These children will serve the Empire until they understand that peace is weakness. The galaxy will see what happens to species that refuse to fight. The transmission ended, and Kim Dae stared at the blank screen, feeling something break inside his chest. His little Hana was gone, taken by monsters who thought hurting children was a sign of strength. Across human space, similar scenes played out as parents received the terrible news. Dr. Park Soo collapsed in her medical bay when she saw Jin in the cage. Admiral Lee Wan watched his daughters crying on the screen and felt 3,000 years of peace crumble into dust. The Zephyrian ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying 43 human children toward the outer rim where no rescue was possible. The galaxy had just learned that some lines should never be crossed, but the galaxy was about to learn something else. Humanity was about to remember how to be angry. Kim Dae stood in the abandoned armory of Luna Station, staring at weapons that had not been touched for 3,000 years. Dust covered everything like a gray blanket that marked the passage of peaceful centuries. The plasma rifles hung on there, racks like sleeping metal beasts waiting to wake up again. His hands shook as he lifted one of the ancient weapons, feeling its cold weight in his palms. The rifle was heavier than he expected, but somehow it felt right in his hands, like his fingers. Remembered how to hold it even after so many generations of peace, Kim Dae had been trained in old military history, but touching real weapons was completely different. 3,000 years ago, his ancestors had used these same types of guns to fight. The War of Unification, when humans learned to stop fighting each other. The weapons felt strange and familiar at the same time. Like meeting a relative you had only heard about in stories, Kim Dae pulled up the old training manuals on his computer screen and began to read about things his species had forgotten. Meanwhile, on the medical station, Dr. Park Soo walked through her clinic, turning off the healing machines one by one. The devices that had saved thousands of lives hummed quietly as she shut them down. Her gentle hands that had mended broken bones and cured diseases now moved with grim purpose toward a different goal. In the storage room behind her office, she found the emergency fabrication unit that could create medical tools. In crisis situations, Dr. Park Soo connected it to the station's main computer and began downloading weapon blueprints from the ancient military archives. Her knowledge of anatomy told her exactly where to aim to stop an enemy, quickly. Every bone joint, muscle, and nerve she had learned to heal could also be targeted to cause maximum damage. The same precision that made her a great doctor would make her something much more dangerous. Dr. Park Soo began designing weapons that could cut through Zephyrian armor like it was made of paper on Earth. Admiral Lee Wan walked through the Museum of Human Conflict for the first time in 20 years. The building contained artifacts from every war humanity had ever fought before. The Great Peace began. Dusty. Display cases held uniforms, weapons, and battle flags from conflicts that most humans preferred to forget. He stopped in front of a holographic display showing the Battle of Titan, where human forces had destroyed an entire fleet using tactics that seemed impossible. The soldiers in the recording moved with deadly efficiency, showing no mercy to their enemies. Admiral Lee Wan watched the same battle sequence over and over, trying to understand how his peaceful species had once been so terrifyingly effective at war. The museum director found him there 6 hours later, still studying the ancient battles. The old woman had worked at the museum for 40 years and had never seen anyone look at the displays with such intense focus. Admiral Li Wan turned to her with eyes that seemed different, somehow harder and colder than they had been that morning. "Do we still have the complete tactical archives from the Unification Wars?" he asked. "Yes, sir," the director replied nervously. "They are in the restricted section that requires special authorization to access." "I am authorizing myself," Admiral Li Wan said firmly. "I need everything about fleet movements, battle strategies, and weapons production from the war years, all across human space. Similar scenes were playing out in museums, archives, and old military installations. Humans who had spent their entire lives helping others began learning about the darker skills their species had once mastered. Parents looked at pictures of their stolen children and felt ancient instincts awakening in their minds. The Galactic Council sent worried messages to Earth asking why humans were suddenly accessing military databases and visiting weapon storage facilities. Ambassador Trell of the Draknari called Admiral Li Wan personally to express concern about humanity's changing behavior. "Admiral, we have noticed unusual activity in human space," the silver-skinned diplomat said through the communications screen. "Your people are accessing restricted historical files, and we are worried about your emotional state." Admiral Li Wan looked at the alien ambassador with cold eyes that made Trell step backward, even though they were separated by thousands of light years. "Our children have been stolen," he said in a voice that carried no warmth. "The galaxy wanted to see what humans do when we are threatened. Now you will find out." "But Admiral, surely we can negotiate with the Zephyrians," Trell said desperately. "Your reputation for peace is too valuable to throw away over this unfortunate incident." Admiral Li Wan ended the transmission without another word. He had no interest in talking to aliens who called the kidnapping of children an unfortunate incident. The time for words had passed, and the time for action was beginning. In hidden facilities throughout human territory, work began on projects that had not been attempted for 3 millennia. Ancient shipyard designs were pulled from storage and modified with modern technology. The ships being built were painted in colors that had not been seen since the old wars, black hulls with red markings that meant only one thing. These were not exploration vessels or cargo haulers being constructed in the secret shipyards. These were weapons of war designed for one purpose: killing enemies as efficiently as possible. The new ships combined 3,000 years of peaceful technological advancement with the deadliest weapons humanity had ever created. Kim Day accepted command of the first battle fleet. Even though he had never fired a shot in anger, his peaceful nature was being replaced by something harder and more focused. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Hana's face pressed against the bars of that cage and felt his heart turn a little. Colder Dr. Park Soo became the chief weapons designer for the new fleet. Her healing hands now created instruments of destruction with the same precision she had once used to save lives. She named every weapon after one of the stolen children so that each shot fired would carry the memory of their suffering. Admiral Li Wan took overall command of what was being called the Terran Liberation Fleet, even though everyone knew it was really an army of revenge. He studied the ancient battle tactics until he could recite them perfectly and began planning an assault that would make the galaxy remember why humans had once been feared. The work continued day and night as humans shed 3,000 years of civilization like an old coat they know. Longer needed factories that had built medical equipment retooled to create weapons. Shipyards that launched cargo vessels began constructing warships. Teachers who educated alien children learned how to target enemy weak points. 72 hours. After the kidnapping, Admiral Li Wan sent a single message to the Zephyrian Empire through all communication channels. The message was simple and direct, containing only 15 words that would change galactic history forever. "Return our children." within 24 hours or face the consequences of your actions. The response came quickly from War General Vorth himself. The massive Zephyrian leader appeared on screens throughout human space, laughing as he stood in front of cages containing the human children. The children looked scared and tired, but they were still alive. "Your precious offspring are learning valuable lessons about strength," he said mockingly. "They will serve the Empire until they understand that peace is for the weak. Perhaps when they are adults, we will return them to show the galaxy what proper education can accomplish." The transmission ended with images of the children working in dark mines under the supervision of armed guards. Little Nam Bo could be seen, trying to lift rocks that were too heavy for his small arms, while a guard shouted at him to work faster. Hana and Jin tried to help the younger children, while Min and So held each other and cried. When Admiral Li Wan saw those images, something inside him died forever. The gentle diplomat who had negotiated peace treaties for decades was replaced by something the galaxy had not seen for 3,000 years. A human who remembered that his species had once conquered worlds, the Terran Liberation. Fleet launched toward Zephyrian space, carrying weapons that combined ancient human ruthlessness with modern technological superiority. The most peaceful species in the galaxy was going to war, and the universe was about to remember why that was. A very bad thing for their enemies. The Zephyrian patrol fleet near Kepler Station consisted of 12 heavy cruisers that had conquered dozens of star systems over the past century. Their hulls were scarred from countless battles, and their crews were veteran warriors who had never lost a fight. The ships moved in perfect formation, through space like metal sharks hunting for prey. Captain Grix commanded the lead cruiser and felt confident as his sensors detected approaching human vessels. 12 ships against 12 ships seemed like fair odds, but Grix knew that humans had been peaceful for 3,000 years. They probably did not even remember how to fight properly and would likely surrender when they saw real warriors. "Look at them coming so slowly," Grix laughed too, his bridge crew pointing at the tactical display. "The human ships are probably filled with diplomats who want to negotiate for their little ones." The other Zephyrian officers joined in the laughter because they all knew humans as weak, peace-loving creatures who ran away from violence. The idea of humans actually fighting a space battle seemed as ridiculous as fish trying to fly through the air. But when the human ships came within weapons range, something unexpected happened instead of slowing. Down to talk, the human vessels split into attack formations that the Zephyrians had never seen before. The ships moved with deadly precision, like they were following ancient battle plans that had been perfected over thousands of years. Kim Dees' flagship was named Hana's Fury, and it led the assault with weapons that Dr. Park Soo had designed specifically to destroy Zephyrian armor. The first volley of plasma fire cut through the enemy shields like they were made of glass instead of military-grade energy barriers. The Zephyrian cruisers tried to return fire, but the human ships moved in patterns that made them almost impossible to hit. They used something called Wolfpack tactics, where multiple vessels attacked a single target from different angles at the same time. The ancient human strategy overwhelmed the Zephyrian defenses completely. Captain Grix watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by enemies he had thought were harmless. His heavy cruisers exploded one by one under the relentless human assault. The warriors who had conquered worlds died without understanding how they had been defeated so easily. Within 17 minutes, all 12 Zephyrian warships were nothing but debris floating in space. The few survivors, who managed to escape in life pods, sent desperate warnings back to their empire. These humans are not the same species anymore. They broadcast in terror. They fight like demons. The human fleet suffered no losses at all during the battle. Kim Dae stood on his bridge, looking at the wreckage of enemy ships, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. These were the people who had stolen his daughter, and now they were dead. The gentle commander who once mediated trade disputes had become something much more dangerous. News of the battle spread quickly through both human and Zephyrian space. The humans had not just won, they had achieved total victory without losing a single ship. The galaxy began to realize that 3,000 years of peace had not made humans weak. It had only given them time to become more dangerous. Dr. Park Sus weapons proved devastatingly effective against Zephyrian technology. The Jin's Justice plasma cannons could melt through enemy armor in seconds. The Children's Vengeance missiles carried warheads that made enemy shields completely useless. Every weapon she designed carried the name of a stolen child, and each one killed enemies with terrifying efficiency. Admiral Li Wan coordinated 17 simultaneous attacks across different star systems using battle strategies that had not been seen since the ancient wars. The Sol Doctrine called for overwhelming force applied at the enemy's weakest points. The Mars Gambit used fake retreats to lure enemies into traps, where they could be destroyed completely. Human fleets struck Zephyrian mining colonies, trade stations, and military outposts with surgical precision. The attacks were timed perfectly so that enemy reinforcements could not arrive in time to help. Each battle followed the same pattern. Humans appeared, destroyed everything in sight, and disappeared before help could arrive. The Zephyrian Empire had controlled the Outer Rim territories for over 500 years through fear and superior military technology. But their weapons and tactics were designed to fight conventional enemies who followed predictable patterns. Humans fought with desperate fury that made no sense to traditional military thinking. Zephyrian commanders sent increasingly panicked reports back to their homeworlds describing human attacks that seemed impossible. Enemy ships appeared without warning, struck with incredible force, and vanished before counterattacks could be launched. The humans took risks that should have resulted in their own destruction, but somehow always succeeded. War General Vorth received these reports in his fortress on the capital world and felt growing unease. He had expected humans to send diplomats begging for their children's return. Instead, they were systematically destroying his empire with military efficiency that bordered on the supernatural on the prison moon of Theta Scorpii. 43 human children endured conditions that no child should ever face. The mining facility was dark, cold, and filled with dangerous machinery that injured anyone who was not careful enough. Zephyrian guards forced the children to work 12 hours every day, digging ore from deep underground tunnels. Hana had become the unofficial leader. Of the human children, even though she was only 8 years old, she helped the younger ones like Nam Bo, who could barely lift the heavy tools they were forced to use. The brave little girl shared her food with children who were too weak to work, and told them stories about Earth to keep their spirits alive. Jin used his knowledge of alien languages to communicate with other prisoner species and learn about the guard schedules. He discovered when the shifts changed and where the weakest security points were located. The 10-year-old boy who had once collected friendship tokens now planned escape routes and taught other children how to hide from brutal overseers' men, and so stayed close together at all times because being twins helped them feel less alone in the terrible place. They sang quiet earth songs to comfort the younger children and promised that their daddy would come to save them, even though they were not sure if it was true. Little Nam Bo still carried the torn pieces of his stuffed bear that the soldiers had damaged during the kidnapping. The 6-year-old boy tried to fix his toy with scraps of cloth he found in the mine, but it never looked the same. The guards thought it was funny to see such a small child trying to repair something that was broken beyond fixing. The conditions in the prison were deliberately harsh because War General Vorth wanted to break the children's spirits before sending them back to show the galaxy that human weakness had consequences. But the children supported each other with courage that their captors did not expect to find. Intelligence reports from human spy networks revealed the exact location of the prison facility on Theta Scorpii. The information came at a high cost because several brave agents died getting the coordinates, but their sacrifice gave Admiral Lee Wan the target he needed for the most important mission of the war. Kim Dae volunteered to lead the rescue assault personally, even though it would be the most dangerous operation attempted so far. The prison moon was heavily defended with orbital weapons platforms and 3 full battle fleets, but he did not care about the odds. His daughter was on that moon, and he was going to bring her home. Dr. Park Soo designed special weapons specifically for the rescue mission that could disable guards without harming the children. The assault force would have only minutes to find and evacuate 43 small humans before Zephyrian reinforcements arrived in overwhelming numbers. Admiral Lee Won coordinated support fleets to prevent enemy ships from reaching Theta Scorpii during the rescue operation. The battle would require perfect timing and flawless execution, because failure meant the children would die and the war would be lost. The Terran Liberation Fleet prepared for the most important fight in human history, knowing that success would save their children, but failure would destroy everything they had worked for. The galaxy was about to witness the full fury of a species that had remembered how to wage war. The rescue ships arrived at Theta Scorpii like avenging angels dropping out of hyperspace with weapons already firing. Kim Dae led the assault personally in Hana's Fury, while support fleets engaged the orbital defense platforms that protected the prison moon. The battle was fierce and desperate, with human ships taking impossible risks to reach their children. Dr. Park Soo's weapons cut through Zephyrian defenses like they were made of paper. The Jin's Justice cannons destroyed guard towers in seconds, while Children's Vengeance missiles eliminated the barracks where off-duty soldiers slept. Human boarding parties stormed the mining facility with fury that terrified their enemies. Kim Dae found his daughter in a cramped underground cell, barely recognizable after months of abuse and starvation. Hana looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering for someone so young. Her small hands were cut and bleeding from the sharp mining tools, and her clothes were torn and dirty. "Daddy," she whispered in a voice that was much quieter than he remembered. "Is it really you, or am I dreaming again?" "It's really me, sweetheart," Kim Dae said as he knelt beside her and carefully lifted her into his arms. "You are safe now, and we are going home, but—" Something had broken inside the gentle commander as he carried his traumatized daughter to the rescue ship. Hana flinched at every loud noise and cried when other people came too close. The brave little girl who used to draw pictures of alien friends now shrank away from anyone who was not human. Dr. Park Soo found her son Jin in another section of the mine and felt her heart shatter when she saw what had been done to him. The boy who had once collected friendship tokens from different species now refused to speak any alien languages because the guards had beaten him whenever he used words they did not understand. Jin hugged his mother tightly, but his body shook with fear that no 10-year-old should ever feel. The child who had dreamed of becoming a peace ambassador now asked if all the bad aliens were dead and seemed disappointed when she could not give him a definite answer. Admiral Lee Won held his twin daughters Min, and so as they described the horrors they had witnessed. In the prison camps, both girls had lost weight, and their eyes held a hardness that children should never develop. Min showed him scars on her hands from the mining equipment, while So described watching younger children die from neglect and abuse. "We knew you would come for us," Daddy, Min said in a voice that sounded much older than her 7 years. But some of the other kids said their parents would never find them, and they were right, because some families do not have spaceships, So told him. About little Nam Bo, who still carried the pieces of his torn bear, and how the guards thought it was funny to take away the children's food when they cried. The innocent girls who had once learned about different alien cultures with joy now spoke, about their captors with hatred that chilled their father's heart. The rescue mission saved all 43 human children, but the cost of their freedom was measured in more than just the lives lost during the battle. Every child came home carrying psychological wounds that would never fully heal. The youngest ones had nightmares about dark mines and cruel guards, while the older children asked questions about why people could be so evil. Kim Dae sat beside Hannah's bed every night listening to her cry out in her sleep for friends who had not survived the prison camps. She would wake up screaming and ask him to promise that the bad aliens could never hurt anyone again. When he tried to explain that not all aliens were evil, she looked at him with disappointment and said he did not understand. Dr. Park Soo examined every rescued child with medical precision that barely contained her growing rage, malnutrition exposure, psychological trauma, and evidence of systematic cruelty designed to break young spirits. The woman who had spent her life healing people now returned to her laboratory with a new purpose, creating weapons that would ensure this never happened again. Admiral Lee Won tried to comfort his daughters, but they described details about the camps that made his blood run cold, stories of children forced to work until they collapsed, of guards who enjoyed causing pain, of systematic brutality designed to teach human children that their species was worthless. The gentle diplomat felt his last connections to peaceful thinking snap like broken glass. The war changed from rescue to complete extermination within hours of the children's return. Human fleets no longer sought quick victories, but total annihilation of everything. Connected to the Zephyrian Empire, military bases were destroyed so completely that not even debris remained. Civilian infrastructure became legitimate targets because the people who built it had supported child slavery. The Galactic Council sent increasingly desperate messages demanding that humanity stop the systematic destruction of an entire species. Ambassador Trell of the Draknari called Admiral Lee Won, personally begging him to show mercy and remember humanity's reputation for peaceful resolution of conflicts. "We are showing restraint," Admiral Lee Won replied as he held his traumatized daughters. "Your definition of restraint is different from ours, but Admiral, this level of destruction goes against everything humanity has stood for," Trell pleaded. "The galaxy respects you because you solve problems through diplomacy, not violence." Admiral Lee Won looked at the alien ambassador with eyes that contained no warmth. "The Zephyrians tortured our children for months while you held committee, meetings, and discussed proper procedures. They treated 6-year-olds as slave labor while you debated diplomatic solutions. This is our diplomatic solution." Intelligence reports revealed the true scope of Zephyrian crimes against the human children. The kidnapping had not been a random act of aggression, but part of a scientific study designed to measure human psychological breaking points. The Empire had documented every detail of the children's suffering, planning to use the data in future. Operations against Earth itself medical records showed that the prison guards had been specifically instructed to cause maximum psychological damage without killing their victims. The children were test subjects in experiments designed to determine how much torture humans could endure before their spirits broke completely. When this information spread through human space, even the voices calling for restraint fell silent. War General Vorth realized his empire was doomed and sent a final, desperate transmission offering complete surrender, total reparations, and his own execution in exchange for mercy. The message was broadcast on all channels with footage of Zephyrian leaders begging forgiveness for their crimes against human children. Admiral Lee Won responded personally while holding Min and So in his arms. "You had months to show mercy to children who had never hurt anyone. Instead, you studied their suffering like it was a science experiment. There will be no negotiations, no surrender, and no mercy. You wanted to see human strength. Now you will see all of it." Dr. Park Soo had developed weapons that could destroy entire planets by turning their atmospheres into poison gas. The same knowledge that helped her heal lung diseases could create toxins that made air unbreathable. Her dedication to preserving life had been replaced by an equal commitment to ending it efficiently. Human fleets systematically hunted down every Zephyrian military unit in space, while ground forces eliminated their bases on hundreds of worlds. The species that had built an empire through conquest and cruelty discovered what total war looked like when waged by people who had nothing left to lose. The galaxy watched in growing horror as humanity demonstrated that 3,000 years of peace had only delayed their capacity for violence. The most gentle species in known space was methodically exterminating their enemies with efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. Children throughout human space learned new lessons about the universe as they watched their parents wage war for them. The innocent belief that good people could always solve problems peacefully was replaced by the understanding that sometimes violence was the only language. Evil understood. The age of human peace was ending, and the age of human dominance was about to begin. The Battle of Zephyr Prime lasted 3 days and marked the end of an empire that had controlled the Outer Rim for 5 centuries. The Zephyrian capital world was protected by the largest military fleet in their territory, with orbital weapons, platforms that could destroy entire fleets, and ground defenses that had never been breached by any enemy. Kim Day commanded the orbital assault from Hana's Fury, watching as human weapons reduced military installations to glowing craters in the planet's surface. Dr. Park Seuss' terrible creations performed exactly as designed, cutting through defenses that had protected the Zephyrian homeworld for hundreds of years. The final battle was not really a battle at all, but an execution carried out with surgical precision. Human fleets surrounded the planet and systematically destroyed every military target while preventing any ships from escaping. Not a single Zephyrian vessel broke through the blockade and war. General Vorth died in his command bunker. As human bombs turned his fortress into molten metal, his last words were recorded by human surveillance equipment and broadcast throughout the galaxy. We awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. The massive alien who had ordered the torture of human children spent his final moments understanding that some species should never be provoked. Within 6 months of the rescue mission, the Zephyrian Empire ceased to exist as a political entity, their surviving military units scattered to distant systems, but human hunter-killer fleets pursued them with relentless determination. The species that had built their civilization on conquest and cruelty discovered that total war meant exactly what the words suggested. Admiral Lee Wan stood before the Galactic Council in a chamber that had been designed for peaceful negotiations between civilized species. Behind him stood his daughters Min and So, both now wearing the black and red uniform of the Human Defense Force. Their young faces showed a hardness that had not existed before the prison camps. The council chamber fell silent as the assembled ambassadors looked at the human children who had survived Zephyrian torture. Min stepped forward and spoke in a clear voice that carried to every corner of the vast room, describing the systematic abuse that 43 human children had endured while the galaxy held committee meetings, so detailed the scientific experiments performed on 6-year-olds while diplomats debated proper procedures. Little Nam Bo, now 9 years old and bearing visible scars, showed his damaged stuffed bear to cameras that broadcast his testimony across hundreds of worlds. Their words carried the weight of experience that no child should possess, but every adult needed to hear. When they finished speaking, the silence in the chamber was absolute, because everyone understood that something fundamental had changed in galactic politics. The new human doctrine was simple and absolute. Any species that harmed human civilians would face total war with no negotiations, no warnings, and no mercy. Human colonies established defensive fleets armed with weapons that made the Zephyrian Empire look like children playing with toys. Trade agreements now included military clauses that gave humans the right to station warships wherever their people lived or worked. The galaxy's former peacemakers had become its most feared warriors, and everyone knew that the change was permanent. Kim Day accepted promotion to Fleet Admiral, commanding humanity's expanded military forces that patrolled trade routes with authority that no one questioned. His daughter Hannah, now 12 years old, studied tactical manuals alongside her regular schoolwork, preparing for a future where humans could never again afford to be defenseless. The gentle girl who once drew pictures of alien friends now designed battle formations in her spare time. When asked about her career plans, she told her father she wanted to join the Defense Force to protect other children from what had happened to her. The innocence that had been stolen could never be returned. Dr. Park Sue established the Children's Memorial Research Center, where she developed both medical treatments for trauma survivors and increasingly sophisticated weapons systems. Her work saved lives and ended them with equal efficiency as she pursued dual goals of healing and protection. Jin, now 13, assisted in her laboratory, learning both medicine and military technology. The boy, who had once collected friendship tokens from different species, now helped design humanity's defensive systems. His childhood dream of becoming a peace ambassador had been replaced by a determination to ensure that evil people could never hurt children again. Other species adapted quickly to the new reality because they understood that the galaxy's power balance had shifted permanently. The Draknari signed mutual defense treaties with humanity, offering their fleets as auxiliary forces. The Altarians provided intelligence networks that helped humans identify potential threats before they became actual problems. Former neutral species requested human protection, understanding that association with humanity meant safety in an increasingly dangerous universe. Trade flourished under human oversight, but potential aggressors learned that 3,000 years of accumulated technological advancement, combined with renewed military focus, created weapons beyond their worst nightmares. The galaxy discovered that humans had never actually forgotten how to wage war. They had simply chosen not to practice it. The ancient tactical knowledge remained in their historical archives, waiting to be combined with modern technology when circumstances required it. The result was a military force that other species could barely comprehend. Pirates who had once raided shipping lanes found their bases reduced to atomic particles by human response fleets. Slavers who targeted any species under human protection simply disappeared without trace. Warlords who threatened peaceful worlds learned that humanity would cross any distance to eliminate threats to innocent people. Dr. Park Sue's weapons became the foundation for a new generation of human military technology that made previous galactic conflicts look primitive. Her understanding of biological systems allowed her to create weapons specifically designed to neutralize different alien physiologies with maximum efficiency. The Jin's Justice plasma system could be calibrated to penetrate any known armor type. The Children's Vengeance missile series carried warheads that adapted to enemy defensive systems automatically. The weapons bore the names of rescued children, but their capabilities came from a mother's determination to protect every child in the galaxy. Human colonies throughout space became fortress worlds where children could grow up safely behind defensive systems that made invasion impossible. Automated defense platforms surrounded every human settlement, while patrol fleets maintained constant vigilance against potential threats. The rescued children grew up in this new reality, understanding that their suffering had changed the course of galactic history. Hannah became a fleet commander known for tactical brilliance that combined her father's strategic mind with lessons learned in Zephyrian prison camps. Jin developed medical protocols that could treat trauma in any species while also designing weapons to eliminate those who caused such trauma, and so joined the diplomatic corps. But their version of diplomacy involved making it clear to other species that harming humans or human allies would result in immediate and total retaliation. Their childhood experience in the prison camps gave them insights into evil that made them extremely effective at identifying potential threats. Little Nambo kept his damage bare as a reminder of what had been lost, but also became a symbol of what humanity would protect. He grew up to become head of Child Protection Services, ensuring that no young being anywhere in human space would ever face the horrors he had survived. Admiral Lee Wan often walked through. The memorial garden on Earth surrounded by statues of the 43 rescued children. Their faces carved in eternal youth reminded every human of why the species could never return to its old, peaceful ways. The galaxy had taken their innocence and learned too late that some lines should never be crossed. The memorial bore a simple inscription that became humanity's new motto in galactic affairs. We tried peace for 3,000 years. That experiment is overtrade delegations. Visiting. Earth always stopped at the memorial to pay respects and understand the price of crossing humanity. The garden served as both a tribute to suffering children and a warning to anyone who might consider similar actions in the future. Human technological advancement accelerated dramatically as resources once devoted to pure research were redirected toward defensive applications. The species that had given the galaxy medical advances, agricultural improvements, and educational systems now focused their creativity on protecting what they valued. Most new human colonies were established with military considerations as the primary factor in site selection. Strategic locations that could control trade routes or defend against potential threats became more important than planets with the best farming or mining potential. The human defense force grew from a small rescue fleet into the most powerful military organization in galactic history. Recruitment was voluntary, but every human settlement provided more applicants than could be accepted. The species had remembered that some things were worth fighting for. Children throughout human space learned new lessons alongside traditional subjects. Every student studied basic self-defense, tactical awareness, and emergency protocols. The innocent belief that good intentions could solve all problems was replaced by understanding that strength sometimes determined who survived to negotiate Dr. Park.